All right, welcome to The Explainer. Today we are digging into the real story behind one of the most famous masks in the world. It's a tale of rebellion, of betrayal, and a plot that, if it had worked, would have completely changed the course of history. So you've seen this mask, right? That creepy, smiling face. It's everywhere, from protest movements to movies. But how on earth did the face of a man who was publicly executed for treason become the symbol for fighting the power? Well, the answer is way more twisted and interesting than you probably think. To get to the bottom of the symbol, we gotta go way back. We have to understand the man himself, and, just as important, the oppressive, terrifying world that created him. See, this isn't just a story about a bomb, it's about what pushes people to do something so desperate, so extreme. Okay, so let's set the scene. We're in 17th century England, and it is a very scary time if your faith is on the wrong side of the law. This place was basically a tinderbox, just waiting for a spark. Look, this wasn't just some vague prejudice. This was a systematic, top-down effort to crush an entire community. I mean, think about it. You couldn't practice your faith. You had to go to the state church or face fines that could literally bankrupt you and your entire family. Even owning a rosary? A crime. We're talking about a full-on pressure cooker. So when Queen Elizabeth I dies, there's this little flicker of hope for Catholics. The new king, James I, his mom was a Catholic martyr. So maybe, just maybe, things will get better. Nope. He crushed that hope almost immediately, basically saying he hated their faith and kicked all their priests out of the country. For a few guys, that was it. That was the last straw. The time for hoping was over. Now, here's something that gets lost in the story all the time. The guy whose face is on the mask, he wasn't even the leader, not by a long shot. The real mastermind, the brains of the operation, was this guy, Robert Catesby. He was charming, he was intense, and he'd watched his own family get destroyed by the government. For him, this wasn't just politics, this was personal. This was revenge. So all this rage, this feeling of being backed into a corner, it's about to explode into one of the most audacious, terrifying plots in history. And Catesby wasn't just thinking small, like an assassination. Oh no. He wanted to blow the entire government off the face of the earth in one single massive explosion. Okay, so this is basically our cast of characters for this insane drama. On one side, you've got Catesby's crew, the conspirators, and on the other, the establishment they're trying to obliterate, headed up by the king's spy master, Robert Cecil. And trust me, Cecil was not a guy you wanted to mess with. Catesby had the vision, right? He was the architect, but he needed a guy who could actually build the bomb. He needed a specialist, a demolition man, and he found the absolute perfect guy for the job, Guy Fawkes. Fawkes was different. He wasn't one of the fancy gentry. He was a hardened soldier, an explosives expert, and a true believer. He was the weapon. Okay, so they swear this secret oath, and the plan is in motion. Their first idea? To dig a tunnel. Hilariously, it fails. I mean, these guys are gentlemen, not coal miners. But then, they get this unbelievable stroke of luck. A cellar directly under the House of Lords comes up for rent. You can't make this stuff up. So they haul in 36 barrels of gunpowder and leave Fawkes, using the alias John Johnson, to sit and wait. The plan is perfect. The bomb is set. Everything is ready to go. But Catesby made one critical mistake. He forgot about the one thing you can never fully control, the human heart. And a crisis of conscience is about to bring the whole thing crashing down. See, to pay for all this, Catesby had to bring in some new guys with deep pockets. One of them was his cousin, Francis Tresham. But when Tresham realized the bomb would kill everyone, including Catholic nobles, including his own brother-in-law, he freaked out. Catesby's response was ice cold. He basically said, "Too bad, collateral damage." Well, Tresham couldn't live with that. And so he writes a letter, an anonymous warning sent to his brother-in-law, Lord Montague, just 10 days before the big day. It's super cryptic, telling him to stay away from Parliament, talking about a terrible blow from an unseen hand. Montague gets this letter and, wisely, takes it straight to Robert Cecil, the spy master. Now, here's where things get really clever. Cecil could have just shut it all down right then, but he doesn't. He waits. For 9 whole days. He lets the plotters think they're still safe. He's setting a trap, letting the whole thing play out so he can be the hero who saves the king at the very last second. And then, in the dead of night, just hours before showtime, the trap snaps shut. Guards raid the cellar, and there he is, Guy Fawkes, caught red-handed with the matches in his pocket, ready to light the fuse. It was over. So, the plot is a failure, and now comes the payback, which is going to be brutal for the conspirators. But this is also where the story takes a wild turn, where the long, strange afterlife of this plot really begins. The rest of the crew, they flee, but the big Catholic uprising they were hoping for, it never happens. And then, in this just unbelievable moment of cosmic irony, their own spare gunpowder, the very thing they were masters of, blows up while they're drying it, injuring Catesby. Soon after, the law catches up, and a mastermind is killed. But for Guy Fawkes, captured alive, things were about to get much, much worse. Fawkes was tough. Under questioning, he wouldn't give up any names. So King James I himself signs off on his torture. And this warrant is just bone-chilling. It literally says to start with the gentler tortures, and then step by step, move to the harsher ones, whatever it takes to break him. And this right here is what that looks like. On the left, his signature before the torture. Clear, confident. On the right, after they were done with him. It's just a weak, broken scrawl. You can barely make it out. That is the signature of a man who has been completely shattered by the power of the state. So, how do we get from that to the mask? Well, it's a long road. For centuries, November 5th was basically Hate Guy Fawkes Day. They burned dummies of him on bonfires. He was the ultimate villain. Then, fast forward to the 1980s. A comic book called V for Vendetta completely flips the story. Suddenly, he's a romantic hero fighting a fascist government. And that idea caught on, big time. And isn't that the biggest twist of all? The man the government spent centuries telling everyone to hate, the traitor they burned in effigy every single year, his face is now the global symbol for fighting back against the government. It just goes to show you that history is never really over. And sometimes an idea, a symbol, can be way more explosive than gunpowder ever was.